Last February was one of the most memorable times in my life, not because I finally went on vacation to Japan after the pandemic, but also that's when I finally got my hands on a PS5 with a pretty good deal. Not gonna bore you out with some of my background stories. Long story short, the PS5 was hard to find and purchase, and I finally got one. However, as a gaming console, it is wise that I have to buy games as well for my PS5. I mean, what is a console without its games? So for the first purchase, I decided to go for 3 games, being the Demon's Souls remake, Ghost of Tsushima, and the newly released Hogwarts Legacy. I had an inkling of what the Demon's Souls remake is going to be played, since it is essentially a Souls game, but not the other two. Never seen any Ghost of Tsushima's gameplay, and well, Hogwarts Legacy is pretty vague in their gameplay marketing at that time. Had I noticed sooner on how these games played out, I probably wouldn't have gotten this combination of games, because I think these games are basically the same, and to an extent, all of the major AAA games these days are the same. Let me explain. Going back to Ghost of Tsushima, I never realized that Ghost of Tsushima was going to be a narrative-based open-world game with the focus on the quote-unquote action hack-and-slash combat gameplay. I've always thought that Ghost of Tsushima is going to be a linear story with very little filler content, and it being an open world is the last thing that I expect. Now that I think about it, this game feels like an Assassin's Creed game in terms of the targeted combat, the stealth mechanic, and following the newer Assassin's Creed games, the open world. Furthermore, Ghost of Tsushima also has this third-person camera perspective, which I get that this is a weird point to make, but I think this is one of the deciding factors of AAA games being similar. Because the camera perspective is what you'd see at face value when you first start playing a game. With all of these points in hand, I jumped to Hogwarts Legacy for a change, and Hogwarts Legacy feels the same as Ghost of Tsushima. It is a narrative-based game with similar targeted combat gameplay, similar stealth mechanic, and is an open-world game, and again, the third-person perspective. While the decision of having these aspects did not mean that these games are bad, in fact, I think that Hogwarts Legacy is one of the best games to have come this year. It doesn't mask the fact that they practically plays the same as Ghost of Tsushima, and to an extent, a lot of major AAA games have been so bankrupt of game variety. A glimpse of the best-selling games on the PS5, you can already see somewhat of a pattern here. God of War has practically the same concept, a narrative-based game with hack-and-slash combat with a third-person perspective, just not having an open world. Spider-Man practically plays like an Assassin's Creed game as well, with the open world and the targeted hack-and-slash combat system. Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West is arguably also a Ubisoft-type open-world game, but with their bow against robot monsters gimmick. And to an extent, both The Last of Us and Resident Evil 4 also are included to this category as well, with being a narrative-based third-person perspective game, the only difference being that it's not an open world and the fact that they use guns instead. Forspoken, Gotham Knights, A Plague Tale Requiem, the upcoming Final Fantasy XVI, Jedi Survivor, and even Stray are in this category, and I think you get my point by now. Why are AAA games basically the same game every so often? What happened to family-friendly platformer/puzzle games? What happened to split-screen racing games? What happened to gimmick sports games like Tony Hawk's skating games? What happened to rhythm games? And what happened to strategy games as well? Why are there so many third-person perspective open-world games, basically the games that I have mentioned, but little to no games on the other varying genres of games? And don't get me wrong, these games that I have mentioned are great. Well, most of it. But I would love to see some more variety in my PS5 games. Because as of it is right now, I think this same old formula of a third-person open-world game could be a detriment to the gaming industry And for me personally, I am bored out of my mind with these samey games. Maybe I'm getting too old, who knows? But unfortunately for now, my PS5 is going to collect some dust until I find a game that I wanted on my PS5.